Hi, it's Dena Tollefson, and welcome to my studio. I am so glad to have you here today. Today's going to be a great video. It's called Koi Serenity Part 2, and here in Part 2, I'm demonstrating for you how I'm adding texture to a finished underpainting. So the finished underpainting I created in Part 1, and if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I encourage you to please watch that when you get a chance. And if you're like me, you really love texture. I'm kind of a texture junkie and can't get enough of it. And so I'm sharing with you the process that I use in creating my paintings. I'll go in and create an underpainting first, and then go back in after that's fully dry and use spoons and palette knives to add some luscious, thick texture to the top of the painting. Then also later in the video today, I'll give you a little glimpse. Some of you have been wanting to see a close-up of Groshi and Romeo, my little cockatiel. So later I'll share a little glimpse of them and also a quick little hello to Muffin. But let's get started. So here's the painting that I started with. And you can see here it's a flat painting. And then in this next photo here, and I'll leave that second photo up in the corner for you to refer to. But the second one is where I'm adding the texture. And this texture technique I developed in the year 2000, and it's called Daubism, for the thick slabs of paint that are applied with palette knives and spoons. And each color is individually mixed. So the difference between what I'm doing and traditional impasto techniques, this is an impasto technique, but what's different than other techniques is these cupped forms of paint. And what's also different is the idea that all of the individual daubs, none of the colors are blended within the daub. So they're all individually mixed colors and individual identities of colors. So technically, in art parlance, the technique of Daubism falls within the realm of divisionism, which means that you have two colors of paint which are adjacent but are not blended together. So what you see me doing here, this is all being done in acrylic paint. So it is also possible to do an oil paint technique like this. I do this sometimes in oil, and I'll do an underpainting which is either in oil paint or it'll be an underpainting in acrylic paint. And then on top of that I can put daubs of oil on top of oil. I could put daubs of oil on top of acrylic. What you can't do is you can't put acrylic paint on top of oil paint. So if this underpainting, for example, had been done in oil, I would need to finish it or put the texture on top also in oil. And that's following archival principles of following the fat over lean principle, which means that each layer on top is able to dry. And if you're going to have oil, for example, in your process, the oiliest layers are on the very top and the least oily layers are on the bottom. When you're doing it all in acrylic, you don't have to worry about that. You just paint in all acrylic. But if you are going to be doing acrylic paint and oil paint, you want to be sure to follow that principle of putting your oil layer on top of your acrylic layer, or you could do oil on top of an oil underpainting. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, leave me a question and I'll follow up in the answer on the comments, but hopefully that makes sense. Alright, so in doing this Daubism technique, I'm applying, layer after layer. So I'm kind of attacking one color at a time. You can see here I've got all of the blue shadow areas. I'm going in with the spoon and addressing all of those with just one individually hand-mixed color. Then over what I'll be doing then is, as those dry, coming back in with other sizes of knives, with palette knives, with other sizes of spoons. I've got two sizes of spoons that I use, and those are reserved just for painting because you don't want to use your eating utensils to paint with. but it is a thing where now that I've kind of got these just solid colors, I'm going to flip the painting over. I like to flip, especially larger canvases, I'll flip them partway through and I'll work on them upside down, work on them with a side orientation to try and make sure that there's balance through the whole painting, and so that I don't just paint only kind of in one area. I've had that happen before. If I don't flip my larger canvases, I'll end up having a whole lot of daubs on one set of the canvas that I can reach easily, and then the other part of the canvas doesn't have as many. And it's important to me that my work feels balanced, so that's kind of a little tip that you can rotate your canvas, and sometimes rotating it will help give you a whole new perspective on it. I think it's kind of interesting. The fish look interesting upside down. It's just another way to get the paint on and get it on in a cohesive way. So now mixing up, and what I've been doing is I've been using there are only two colors of blue in this painting, just the Ultramarine blue and the Phthalo blue red shade. But all of the colors that you see here have all been mixed by adding other colors in with it. Adding black, adding white, adding yellow ochre, adding Pyrrole Orange, adding a little bit of some of the purples. All of these things, you can create all new colors by doing that. So let's get this canvas flipped back over again. And in the flipping process, I try and do that, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 times during the entire painting session, just to kind of rotate things around and make sure that I'm on track with keeping things balanced. If you have ways that you like to ensure balance in your painting and in your artwork, leave me a comment below. I'm curious to see if you do that too, where you flip your canvases, if you're doing drawing, if you flip your artwork upside down periodically. Let me know in the comments. I love to hear from you. So now this tiny little thin, long spatula is just a neat way to add tiny little marks. So the spoon will leave a large flat mark, and this little tiny spatula-like palette knife is just a neat way to get some long strokes on, and also just some tiny little marks. So this color that you see here is Diarylide Yellow plus Pyrrole Orange, and now I'm mixing in a little bit of the Permanent Violet Dark. And by mixing that in, you can make a variation of the color which will look like the sides of the fish, like the fish is a little bit underwater. There we go. And we'll get a little mark right on here. There we go. So you can see so far I've been pretty much following the underpainting's colors, or the color scheme that's used in the underpainting. I'm following that pretty strictly, but now what I'm going to be doing is making these variations of color. And to me that's so much fun in a painting, is to look at the color from far away, and it might look like one homogeneous color, and when you get up close, it's kind of like what you see in a pond where there are just many, many variations. And that's part of what I want to do is to have some colors lighter, some colors darker, introducing some grays, that type of thing, so that when you're up close to the painting, you have this experience of seeing all of these different colors. And when you look from far away, then it really looks like something representational, but up close, it's more of an abstract intermix of individual colors. So if you're looking in your work to increase the excitement in an area, especially if you have an area of like one large area of color, consider mixing variations of that color, and then that adds some interest when you get up close. Now this gray I mixed using titanium white and a little bit of Mars black. And I feel like it's important to get, especially on brightly colored paintings, get a lot of neutrals in there and a lot of gray colors. Look how that gray really makes the oranges and the yellows pop in this koi. Now back again with the spoon. There we go. Let's get a little mark right over here, just for fun. That's what's kind of fun when you add texture to a painting. You can kind of add these random colors in a controlled way to give different effects. Different, like light maybe is glinting off of the water, and maybe the fish are stirring up the water and there's some bubbles and some movement. Now a darker version of the gray, all I did here was just add a little bit more Mars black and created a little darker version of the gray. Now this is this blue, this wonderful blue. All that really is just titanium white and French ultramarine. You can see what a pretty contrast that is with the phthalo blue red shade and all the other blue colors that I'd mixed up. Using just, again, these are just two blue colors in the painting. There were only 2 tubes of blue, and all these colors have been mixed by hand by just adding white, black, yellow ochre, and then the orange. And you can make all these really wonderful, nuanced shades of blue, blues and grays. Also thinking when I'm putting the texture on of as far as movement, trying to introduce a sense of movement in the painting. I feel like that's something that that texture can do for you that just plain flat color can't, is when you add that element of texture, you can introduce this sense of movement. Coming in and thinking about the transition areas between the dark and the light colors and balancing those out. And that white tray that you see me holding there that has a red lid, that is a Masterson Stay Wet palette. So that's what I'm mixing on right here. It's a great, these Masterson Stay Wet palettes are really wonderful for keeping your acrylic paint at just the right moisture level. Not too wet and not too dry. And when I'm using these Masterson Stay Wet palettes, I can use the same set of colors. My paint won't dry out, and I can be working on it for actually even a couple weeks, that same set of paint. Get a light blue here. There we go. So this blue that you see here, that's just phthalo blue red shade with a lot of titanium white. We'll get a mark there. And there's a little shot of Muffin, my little Yorkshire Terrier. She's 14 years old, and she is just a loving, dear little thing. But she likes to take a nap while I'm working. A lot of you No Muffin, and Muffin says hello to you. So this painting will be going to Canyon Road Contemporary Art, the gallery that represents my originals in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I live too far to drive because I live in Iowa, so everything gets shipped once it's dry. Well, now let's just take a little peek over here to Romeo and Grouchy. Sometimes you might hear them singing in my videos, and some of you have been asking to get a little closer view. So Romeo is the gray one, and Grouchy is the yellow one. And they send you their greetings. And Romeo gets all excited when he hears his name. And they say hello. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and I really appreciate you stopping by the studio. So here's the finished painting, Koi Serenity. And thank you so much, and take care. All my best to you. Bye-bye.